President Xi's report at last week's party congress, they specifically mentioned that it's important to support the private sector. And of course, this has been said for a while. Do you see that there will be a real improvement to this? And are there any implications for Western businesses as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, I mean, it was certainly, I think, good to see, President Xi mentioned that in his report. I think that really the private sector is so important to China and its future because, that is where innovation, novelty, creativity can come because, the state-owned enterprises, I mean, they have amazing sort of scale and size, but also very bureaucratic and so not very innovative. And so I think that, the private companies, which you've seen over the past decades, companies like Alibaba and Tencent and ByteDance that have been tremendously innovative. I mean, Huawei as well. And, but if you look at the last few years, it does seem that there is increasing interest from the state in having control. So I know there's been some instances in some of those companies I just mentioned where, the government, it might actually be the party, I'm not even sure if it's the government, actually has in some ways required sale of a certain amount of stock to one of these entities, either the party or the government. Again, I can't remember. And then actually those shares have some special rights where maybe they can put someone on the board, or there's some sort of veto power over certain decisions. There's been expansion of party branches within private enterprises. So I do think while it's really good to hear that from President Xi, my sense is sort of the ideology of the government is not about grassroots innovation, but it's about having mechanisms of top-down control. And and they may give money, but you can see, many of the funds that they gave, for instance, for semiconductors, the big fund, a lot of that money went to waste and people were prosecuted for corruption. So I think that the top-down logic, it does not help private enterprise. I think private enterprise, to be truly an engine of growth and innovation, has to have to be let free. And I don't, I don't see sort of the controls lessening on private business.
Mm. Do you see a difference between the bigger private companies, such as, you mentioned Tencent, Alibaba? Of course, we have seen that even Fusion recently is in trouble, and after HNA and Wanda, etc. But then there are also millions smaller these companies, but they don't make headlines. Do you think they benefit somehow from this?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked that, because I do think in the West, I mean, we have these famous companies are sort of easy to see, but I think the recent statistics I saw that there's like 25 million businesses in China and 15 million entrepreneurs. So some entrepreneurs own multiple businesses. So this, goes way beyond sort of Jack Ma and Pony Ma and Ren Zhengfei. I mean, this is, truly an amazing example of entrepreneurship. And perhaps, I mean, I did for the book, we interviewed over 30, a lot of the data in the book is actually, we have these, a variety of historical data and databases, but also we do interviews. We did interviews with over 30 entrepreneurs. Most of this interviews were done, before 2021. And I think that, they were optimistic about their prospects. And so, maybe for those entrepreneurs that haven't sort of reached the scale and they're so visible, I know, you probably know this who run rich list that exists. And people always would say, that's, if you get to be top on that list, that's the kiss of death and people get in trouble. So actually, interestingly, talking about the Chinese dinners. I mean, one night I was at a dinner and it was with some university people and some famous alumni from that university. And one of the people had actually donated 1 million renminbi to the university, which actually that's kind of, the universities in China are state owned. They actually don't get that much or state, sort of state funded. And he said, I don't want to be that wealthy, to be honest, because, if I'm really wealthy, it's just like having a target on my back. And so I think, your idea of separating out, actually these really big targets where there may be a lot more control. Yeah, maybe there is a lot more, sort of vibrancy and support for, the tens of millions of other entrepreneurs in China.
Indeed, I think these are also the smaller companies are those that really needed help from the government, particularly when it comes to financing. We know that Chinese banks are not known to be easy to, when it comes to lend to the smaller businesses. But from also our experience working with many Western smaller clients and their counterparts, sometimes we would advise them also to consider smaller Chinese companies that match almost their size sometimes, because they're easier to deal with than those huge Chinese big private companies, which themselves can be very bureaucratic themselves.
Yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense.